and welcome to the Roundtable discussion. I'm Rafaela, your host, and today I'm joined with the lovely cast of Stop and Stare. So we have Ashley McIntosh with us, and also we have Tegan Huskinson, and we're also joined by the director, Emmanuel D. White, and also a viewer of the film, Leonie Thomas, who's going to be giving us a little bit of insight on her perspective of the film. So just moving on to some of the questions. Tegan, I wanted to just ask, the film and character that you were playing required a lot of emotion. There were scenes that were very sort of tough. So I was just wondering, to get kind of some insight on how exactly you went about recording that kind of emotion.
Yeah, it was very difficult. I think a big part of getting that emotion was that I'm quite good friends with the other cast member, Josh, who was the one I was having all these emotions about. So I envisioned the events happening to Josh, and just as our relationship itself made me feel really upset for Josh, and then that worked for being upset with Will, so yeah.
And the film, I feel like, is kind of a stepping stone into grief. And I was wondering, in your perspective, do you think that there's a bigger discussion that needs to happen in regards to portraying grief in the industry and in general? Because, I mean, we all have people, family members close to us, and at some point it's a process we're all going to have to go through. So
yeah, I think an important step of communicating grief is the reactions that people have to people suffering with grief. For instance, we showed the uncomfortability between my character and Eddie's character and Ashley's character, how they were just going about it the wrong way. Eddie was being really caring, but it just wasn't working. It was making everything worse, and the results of that were not very good.
And a question for all of you guys. How was it working with Emmanuel for this film?
It was really fun. It was fun.
Yeah, because you guys have to say that, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, I really like working with Manny. We've worked together a few times, and I've always felt that Manny is a very supportive director, and when you get really emotional about things, he's there. For instance, we filmed another project, and I had to do some things which made me very uncomfortable for me in real life. And Manny was there. He gave me hugs between takes and everything. And yeah, he's just a very supportive director. He cares about the acting as well as the actors. So yeah.
That's cool. That's really important. And Leonie, I was just wondering, so after watching the film, what kind of thoughts did you have about the film?
I thought it was really, really powerful. I thought for such a small film, there was really strong characters established from the beginning, and that really helps convey the whole emotion of it.
Yeah. And just going back to the question I asked Tegan in terms of the whole theme of grief, I feel like as a short film, it does a really good job of portraying, that in one aspect. And as a viewer, was it a film or something that you could kind of relate to, maybe if having experienced any grief in your life, or just understanding that as, a process that eventually we might all have to go through?
I think it was very powerful in portraying kind of what happens behind the closed doors, and the importance of, whether a friend acts okay or whether they don't, establishing that they are okay is so important, because you don't know how somebody is feeling.
And a question for the director himself. So in regards to the film, what kind of brought you to, or set your heart on this particular theme or this story for the film?
I think so I directed it, but also Alina produced it, who you guys met, of course, on set. And it was just that whole idea of, there's a story that she had so fixated in her mind of grief wasn't really being portrayed enough. It wasn't really, she couldn't see things that she watched that she could relate to, having faced grief herself. And it was this whole question of, how do we translate that on film? How do we translate it in a way that students might be able to connect to, that would be able to portray in a sense that a viewer could watch and actually see what, like Leonie said, behind the closed doors. And so that was the vision, and you realize that the film is set through the whole lens of like a webcam, and it's just like portraying this sense of like, you feel like you don't usually see that part of when people face moments like that. And so we wanted to really make the audience feel like they were intruding on Emily's life, the character that Tegan played, on intruding on her life and her relationship with Josh, and that whole sense of is this right? Should I be watching this? And then you see this tragic moment happen in her life, and how she almost reacts to it. And so that was the vision behind it, and that was what we tried to do.
Awesome. And in terms of kind of taking that idea sort of in your head and actually translating it into film, was that a difficult process for you?
I remember we were stuck in like a room and we were just like thinking, okay, how are we going to film this? How are we going to make this work? Because tracking a whole relationship would just be so long, it'd be so tedious. It's probably been done so many times before. We don't want it to feel like a rom-com. We want to really portray that sense. And so how we thought of it was essentially her webcam was just there, and we were like, and I think she opened, what's it called again? Like just like iMovie, or like the thing where you like can do like loads of like filters on your face and things like that. And then we were like, imagine if the film was set through just like a whole webcam. And it really just started from there. I'd love to say it was this like crazy moment where everything just fell together.
The accidental moments that sort of bring out these big ideas. So, a question for the actors. What is the best piece of advice in terms of acting that you've received?
Ever.
Ever. Or at least up until now.
I think there's, I'm thinking of two things from our lecturer of acting for camera, Will Schuler, which is one, the donut, which is this little ring around the camera that you're supposed to look at, so you're not quite looking at the camera, but they can see your eyes very clearly, which leads into the second point, which is the inner world, showing the emotions through your eyes more than anything, having this kind of inner monologue going on. So it's magical how it can just be portrayed just through your eyes by thinking things.
Yeah, that is true. And I'd say to take every opportunity that you have to work with a camera in filming, and I'd say also taking criticism constructively. That is so important, or else you won't improve.
Yeah.
So.
And also just wanted to ask, what was the point as actors, that one point in your life where you decided this is the moment that, you know what, actually, this is what I want to do. I want to be an actress or actor, like, this is it. What was that moment for you guys?
So, I mean, I've always found it fun to get up on a stage and do a performance. But I think what made me want to keep doing it is just the community all the time behind stage. I've been in a few musical shows throughout, since school time, since GCSEs, and the community backstage when everyone's like, oh, you've got it, or you're going on to do an emotional scene, and they're like, you'll be fine, just go, you'll be fine. I just think that's amazing. And then I haven't really done camera stuff before, but I found the same thing has happened with camera. You guys behind the camera, it's just so nice to have that relationship going. You make such good friends. I just love the actors behind the performance, you know. Yeah.
I think for me, to be honest, I think it kind of happened quite late because I was painfully shy as a kid. So I kind of would always swerve away from drama. But I knew I could do it though if I really put my kind of mind to it. Oh yeah, okay, I remember. I did a youth musical. I was a kid in the background, had no lines, nothing. And I remember it was like the closing number, everyone was clapping. I was at the back, you couldn't see my face. But I just had that moment of, wow, this is so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
This is, oh, I want to do this every day. So yeah, that's when I knew. The kid in the background wanted to be an actor, yeah.
And Leonie, so as a viewer, 2 questions. So for you, after watching the film, what was your perspective or take on the whole, idea? Because the whole film was kind of through that lens. What kind of, in terms of that kind of, the whole film being through that kind of lens of her computer, what kind of feeling did that give you? Like, what was it like seeing the film through that perspective? Because it's quite unique. It's not something that's really out there or done quite commonly. So
it's quite unusual, and I feel like as a viewer, it's quite voyeuristic. Like you feel like maybe you shouldn't be watching it, but then that kind of leads to the intimacy of it because you do feel this close connection to the characters.
And second question, what throughout the film was a scene that really kind of stood out for you? A scene or a point in the film that kind of really resonated with you, or you just thought that was a really strong or powerful scene?
When it was the party and it was her birthday and she didn't really want to be involved, but her friends came and were trying to make her involved. And I think it kind of shows that even when your friends care and try and make an effort, maybe it's not necessarily the right thing, and just how people grieve differently. Everyone was grieving in that situation, but just showed how people respond to different events differently.
And so in terms of your characterization, getting to terms with your character for the film, what was that whole sort of process like? Kind of figuring out, okay, this is the person I'm playing, how exactly am I going to go about this? Did you do any sort of specific preparation for it, or you kind of just threw yourself in there?
And thinking about it, she's such a different person to myself. Even the way that she handles grief, as we were talking about, it's very, even when she's trying to be nice, I think she can still see it from very much her perspective. So even though, yes, we kind of just threw ourselves in there, we had to kind of take a quick step back and think, okay, this is what I would do. Now let's do the opposite. So that was literally kind of what we did.
And as the director, what was it like working with the actors? Give us a typical idea, set the scene of what it was like, a typical day on set.
Okay, so it literally was a typical day because it was just a day. Everything was shot in a day. Tegan's gone now, but she was absolutely the whole cast, like you couldn't have asked for a much better cast. They were absolutely amazing. Having literally found out about people who work with me know that our roles are just very, very last minute. Like everything just happens just like in a day. And so they arrived on set and I was like, here are your roles. We're shooting in 5 seconds. And so we literally just went for it, and it was absolutely like, they were the world, absolutely embodied that character Tegan did of Emily. And I remember when I was talking to Ashley about, this role of this girl that's kind of a bit shady, coming and asking these questions. She was like, what? And I was like, oh, this is based on a true story. And you came in and you just embodied that role. And Eddie and Josh as well, kind of very hard for them to almost replicate that sense of being in a real relationship, but they actually portrayed it to a T. And so the set was very, very, very lively, especially in those moments where we had the party scene and things like that. But then in the moments where, she finds out that, spoiler alert, that Josh does die, and he does pass away. And those moments where she was crying, especially that final scene, those were very hard moments. Like you could hear a pin drop on set. And so, yeah, that was it.
A question for all of you guys. So the film kind of touches into themes as well as grief and mental health, and just wanted to get your guys' ideas on why you think so many students suffer from mental health issues.
Oh, that's a big question. I think there's so many changes happening in our world, and I think we're developing faster than sometimes we can handle. I don't think the previous generation always knows what to do. So for me, it doesn't seem so kind of unlikely that there's so many kind of issues, mental health, with young people now. It's still stigmatized. We're getting better, but it's still it's definitely stigmatized. And there needs to be more services, more access to services for young people. So
I definitely agree. I feel like in every stage of life you are growing, but especially when you become a student and you are thrust into that life of university, the rate at which you're learning and the things that you have to learn almost increases, and at a rate that you've never seen before. So for example, as a child, you're just learning how to walk. You spend 5 months just learning how to do that, and learn how to eat, like just basic things, and it's almost like you can count those things on a plate, on a list. But then you grow up, and you continue to grow, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into GCSEs. You learn how to do maths, English, science, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and then okay, great, and then you're thrust into university, and like, oh, you learn how to cook for yourself now, and fend for yourself, and make new relationships, and learn in a new place, and study your degree, and do this, and do that, and so the load just increases, and it's like, how do you manage it?
And it seems like from the outside that everyone's managing it, because you have social media and everybody posts like the best section of their life, so you're there like, I can't handle it, but obviously this person can, so what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And who do you talk to?
Yeah.
So
I guess it's that aspect as well of, I think everyone thinks, oh, some people are balancing it
yeah.
so well, and everything has to be perfect for me to like feel that my life is good. And I've learned that it's more of a juggle, that you always find that something will be up at some moments, and there'll be bits that will be down, and you have to throw that ball back in the air and catch it. And yeah, it's more of a yin-yang type of situation.
Yeah, 100%.
That doesn't really exist. Yeah.
And do you think in terms of mental health, I mean, I think that personally there's always more that can be done in terms of support, but what do you guys feel in terms of support? Do you think there is more that can be done and kind of for support for students or in general for mental health? And in terms of the film itself, do you think that sort of creative mediums are a good way of kind of bridging that gap between supporting and kind of raising awareness for mental health issues?
You know, I do think more can be done. I think in this country, university is quite amazing, that the fact that we have mental health services on campus, but what I'm really interested in is what happens to the students when they leave, because it's so hard to get those same services when you go out into the real world. So yeah, I think more needs to be done after leaving school. So definitely.
I think so. I think it's a really good medium to reflect it as well, because people watch things and they say, oh, even if they don't realise they're going through something similar, they can see tendencies in themselves, maybe on someone else, and maybe that will then make them say, oh, maybe I need to go speak to someone, maybe if it's a friend, if it's someone else. So I think it's definitely raises awareness in a way that's relatable.
Yeah.
I think going off of that as well, even if it doesn't necessarily kind of bring about any action practically, I think it's always good to have sort of food for thought, because it always starts with the discussions. You know, if people are talking about it, then someone's going to go from there, and it's sort of chain reaction. So I think that's really important. But I think that's all the questions that we have for today. So thank you for joining the roundtable discussion. It's been a pleasure. And make sure you guys all check out this amazing renowned short film. Stop and Stare. Thank you very much. And I will see you next time. Whenever this happens again.